to understand the first principle of green chemistry. I think a student would be very confused by exactly what understanding looks like or means. We may have an idea in our head, but the student would be kind of lost. Does understand mean I should memorize it? Does it mean I should know who wrote it? Should I know where it came from? Should I be able to recite the example that we used in class that related to it? Like, do I have to use it for something? Like, what does understand mean? A better learning objective in my mind, and this is one of the ones I use when I'm teaching the first principle. I have teach my students about waste metrics, and so the goal that I set them is that they will learn to use the metric of process mass intensity, PMI, and use it to determine which of two reactions generates less waste. So it's a little more concrete, active for the students. Taxonomies of learning, like Bloom's or Marzano's, can be a great source of inspiration, and they can provide us with some active, specific, and measurable verbs that we can use in our learning objectives. For instance, instead of asking students to appreciate a topic or understand a topic, we might ask them to do things like define some term, explain some theory, solve some specific problem, differentiate between two things, and so forth. So again, a lot has been written about taxonomies of learning, and I'm not an expert in them, but I turn to them often to guide me when I'm, having difficulty truly figuring out, defining what I want my students to do with the stuff I'm teaching them. As Jen mentioned before, and Jen, if you want to jump in at some point, feel free. But as she mentioned before, your case studies learning objectives can relate to your course content. They could relate to green chemistry. They can relate to both. So this was an example Jen shared with me about an electrochemistry case study she uses in a general chemistry class. It has to do with a greener electrochemical procedure for producing a product. And Jen's outlined three learning objectives for this. Two of them relate exactly to what you would learn in a Gen Chem class. Calculating cell potentials and calculating free energies of reaction. That's something that our students are already doing in Gen Chem too. But then there's an additional green chemistry learning objective that asks students to kind of see the electrochemistry through the lens of green chemistry. And so I think that's one of the strengths of case study teaching is that it still hits all the goals that we need as instructors that our departments may tell us to teach, but then we could expose our students to the green content. Jen, do you want to say anything before I move on? Okay. Cool. And so I think we should return to our breakout rooms. We could resume our discussions and talk amongst ourselves, talk with our colleagues about, some of those examples we talked about. What specifically might we want our students to learn from that lesson if we chose one of those topics as a case study? What do we want our students to do with that knowledge, and how might they demonstrate to us that they're proficient in it? And maybe in our groups, we can all maybe try writing a learning objective or two based on what we're thinking. Personally, I find writing learning objectives to be really rewarding, but also oftentimes very challenging because I realize that I don't have as well-defined ideas as I originally thought I had. So maybe when we come back after moving into breakout rooms, when we report out, it'd be interesting to hear if other folks have the same challenge as I do, or if folks have tricks for overcoming that. So, and I see Monica has set another breakout room. So see folks on the other side, and we'll be back in 10 or 15 minutes.